My name is Harper Lane. I am 32 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is something I never thought I would survive. If you really want to know how it all happened, then stay with me till the very end because my story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and remember, this story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. The night it all began, the air inside the Grand Elms Hotel felt different, heavier somehow, like every chandelier and velvet curtain carried secrets soaked into the walls. I've been the manager there for almost 6 years, and I thought I had seen everything: angry guests' affairs in the suites, even a man trying to take his own life in the rooftop pool, but nothing could have prepared me for the stranger who checked in that November evening, dragging behind him a scuffed leather suitcase that looked older than the building itself. He signed the register with a flourish that left his name unreadable, and when his gaze met mine, a shiver climbed up my spine. His eyes lingered too long, like he was measuring me, memorizing me. I shook it off, told myself I was being dramatic, but even then the voice in the back of my mind whispered something I refused to acknowledge. "Harper, he knows you." As I handed him his keycard, his hand brushed mine, and though his skin was ice cold, there was a flicker of a smile that suggested he'd been waiting for this moment. I pulled back quickly, forcing a professional smile, but my heart was already pounding. I thought I'd forget him once. I buried myself in nightly tasks, but he made sure I couldn't. Every time I walked past the front desk cameras, I'd catch him loitering in the lobby, staring at the framed photographs of the hotel's grand opening decades ago, his lips moving faintly like he was talking to himself. At first, I convinced myself he was just a harmless eccentric, but then the phone calls started. Internal calls from room 714, his room. When I answered, there was never a voice, only the faint sound of heavy breathing and the low hum of something metallic scraping, as though a blade was being dragged across the edge of a table. The first time I slammed the phone down, annoyed. By the third time, a chill had rooted in my bones. By the fifth, I was trembling so badly I could barely hold the receiver, and then came the note, folded neatly under my office door, written in a script so elegant it almost looked printed. "I've waited too long for this. Don't disappoint me." My pulse raced as I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe one of the night staff thought it would be funny to scare the boss. But deep down I knew it wasn't. None of my staff had handwriting like that. And none of them knew the things this man seemed to know, because later that same night, when I checked the security feed, I saw him standing directly outside my office door at 2:47 a.m., his suitcase at his feet, staring straight into the camera with a half smile, as if daring me to confront him. He never knocked. He never left the note on camera. He simply stood there waiting. I replayed the footage again and again, and each time I watched, I swore his eyes were following me even through the screen. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the old hotel pipes sounded like footsteps approaching my room. I started locking myself in the staff quarters behind the main office, curling up on the narrow cot with the lights on, whispering promises to myself that it was nothing, that it would pass. But then came the whispers, not in my head, through the vents. I'd hear my name whispered low and deliberate. Harper, Harper Lane. Sometimes followed by laughter, soft and strangled, as though someone was choking on it. I knew room 714's vent connected directly to mine. He was doing this on purpose, taunting me. I tried to confront him, but every time I went to his door, I couldn't bring myself to knock. I'd stand there frozen, staring at the brass numbers, my hand trembling inches from the wood, until a sound inside would jolt me like the scrape of a chair being dragged slowly across the floor. My courage would collapse, and I'd flee down the hallway, hating myself for being afraid. In the very hotel I was supposed to control. Then one night I found something that made my blood run cold. A photograph slipped under my office door, not just any photograph, but a picture of me taken while I was asleep in the staff quarters, the glow of the night lamp casting shadows across my face. My first thought was, who took this? But the answer was obvious. Him. He'd been in my room, standing over me, watching me sleep, close enough to touch me. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, clutching the photo with shaking hands. The image was grainy, but there was something scrawled on the back in that same elegant handwriting. Almost time. I couldn't call the police. What would I say? That a guest was staring too long, breathing into phones and leaving creepy notes? They'd laugh, or worse, they'd alert him, and then I'd have no protection at all. I decided to gather evidence. I kept every note, every photo, and I even downloaded the security footage where he stared into the camera, but then the footage disappeared overnight. Every file I'd saved onto the hotel system gone, wiped clean, as if it had never existed. When I asked our IT guy, he said there was no trace, no log of deletion. Maybe you never saved them. Right, he suggested casually, but I knew better. Someone had erased them, and the only person with access to the system besides me was him. My paranoia was devouring me. Guests started complaining about me being distracted. Staff whispered about how pale I looked, how my hand shook when I signed papers, but they didn't know what I was living with. They didn't know about the night. I finally pressed my ear to the vent and heard him whisper something different. "You look just like her." Who was her? Why did he say it like he knew me before? I pressed harder against the vent, desperate, when suddenly there was a loud slam from his room, so violent that the walls vibrated. I stumbled back, heart racing, certain he was coming for me. And then came the night that nearly broke me. At 3:12 a.m., the fire alarm went off. I rushed out into the hall, smoke prickling my throat, panic surging through me as guests spilled from their rooms. But there was no fire, no smoke, no flames, only the heapy shrill scream of the alarm and the chaos of terrified guests. In the middle of it all, he stood calmly at the end of the hallway, suitcase in hand, smiling directly at me through the red flashing lights. And then as suddenly as it started, the alarm cut off. Silence dropped like a hammer. When I looked again, he was gone. No trace, no sound of a door shutting. Just gone. That was when I realized this wasn't just about scaring me. He was playing a game and I was his target. But the worst was yet to come, because the very next night, as I tried to steady myself with coffee in the empty lobby, I heard the elevator ding. My stomach dropped. No one should have been using it. Every guest was asleep. The door slid open with a metallic groan, and inside stood his suitcase alone. No man. Just the suitcase upright in the center, its leather scarred, its brass locks glinting under the dim light. I couldn't move. My breath hitched, my body frozen. The elevator doors began to close, and in that final sliver of light I saw it, something smeared along the side of the suitcase, something dark, something wet, and then the doors shut. When the elevator doors shut on that suitcase, I swear the silence in the lobby became unbearable, pressing into my ears until it felt like I was underwater, my lungs screaming for air. I stood rooted to the marble floor, unable to tear my gaze away from the unmoving doors, my mind clawing for logic. Maybe it was a prank, maybe some staff member had left it there, maybe the man himself had slipped away unseen. But then I remembered the dark smear along its side, thick and glossy under the light, and my stomach twisted with a dread that no rational explanation could soften against every instinct screaming at me to run. I forced myself to press the elevator call button, my finger trembling so violently it barely made contact, and when the doors opened again, the suitcase was gone. Empty metal cage, nothing but the faint chemical tang of cleaning solution, though I knew no one had cleaned it. He had moved it, or worse, he wanted me to think it had never been there. I ran to the security office, desperate to rewind the footage to prove I hadn't lost my mind, but once again the file for that time frame was missing. Entire minutes cut from the system, as if the elevator had never opened at all, and that was when it hit me with nauseating clarity. He wasn't just tormenting me. He had someone helping him inside the hotel, someone with access, someone I trusted. My throat tightened as faces flashed in my mind. Paul at the front desk, sweet but careless. Marissa in housekeeping, who'd been with me for years. Even Roman, the night auditor, who was always overly eager to cover shifts. Could one of them be working with him? The idea gnawed at me until I couldn't breathe that night. I confronted the staff, subtly testing them, dropping hints about strange incidents to see if any would flinch or reveal too much. None did, but when I checked the logs, I noticed something chilling. Room 714 had never been checked into the system. No credit card authorization, no ID copy, no record at all. It was as though the man didn't exist. I swore I remembered him signing the register, but when I opened the ledger, the page was blank, not even an impression from the pen. My hand shook as I traced the smooth paper, remembering vividly how his pen scratched across it, yet here it was clean. Untouched, impossible. I wanted to scream, to tear the book apart, but instead I sat frozen in my office, and that was when I heard it. The dragging sound again, slow and deliberate, like metal scraping along wood, echoing faintly through the vent. Then, his voice low, almost tender. "You can't erase what you did to me, Harper." My blood turned to ice. What I did to him? I didn't even know who he was. My mind raced, searching through every guest, every complaint, every dispute, but nothing fit. Yet the way he said it carried certainty, as though he had been waiting years for this moment of confrontation. Sleep deprived and unraveling, I became desperate. I decided to check room 714 myself. Keys in hand, I crept up the dim corridor, each step sounding like a drumbeat in my skull, my palms slick with sweat. When I slid the keycard into the slot, the green light blinked and the lock clicked open. The room was empty, too empty. The bed was made untouched, no luggage, no personal belongings, not even a glass out of place. But the air was heavy damp, and the smell something metallic sharp and unmistakable like dried blood clinging to the carpet fibers. My eyes darted to the desk where I found a single envelope, my name scrawled across it. In that same elegant hand, inside a photograph slipped out, and I almost collapsed when I saw it. It was of me again, only this time I wasn't asleep. It was taken from the hallway outside my apartment miles away from the hotel, showing me fumbling with my keys after grocery shopping. My hands shook violently as I flipped it over the message written in looping letters. It doesn't matter where you run, I'll always be closer than you think. That was the moment terror turned to fury. Whoever he was, whatever game he was playing, he had crossed the line. He had followed me home, invaded my sanctuary. I wanted to believe. I could go to the police now, but how could I explain photos that vanished, security tapes that erased themselves? Guests who didn't exist in the system. They would think I was losing my mind, and maybe I was. But rage can be stronger than fear, and I swore then that I wouldn't just survive. I would end this. I began to study him every night. I sat in the dark lobby with the monitors glowing, waiting for him to appear. I memorized his movements, his patterns. Sometimes he would pace the hallways without entering a single room. Sometimes he stood by the elevator for hours, suitcase by his side as though guarding it. And sometimes, most horrifying of all, I caught him staring directly into the cameras again, his smile wider, sharper, as though he knew I was watching. On one feed I saw him leave a folded piece of paper outside my office, but when I rushed to open the door there was nothing. My chest tightened with realization. He wasn't leaving these things for me to find by chance. He was controlling when and how I discovered them. He wanted me to feel powerless, desperate, trapped, and it was working. But then a breakthrough. Marissa from housekeeping came to me one morning, pale and trembling, saying she'd found something strange in the laundry chute, a blood-soaked shirt stuffed deep inside, still damp. She thought it belonged to a guest, but couldn't trace it to any room. When she showed me, my stomach lurched. Embroidered on the collar in small faded letters was the hotel's initials, GEH, but we hadn't had uniforms with that embroidery in years. It was an old staff shirt from before my time as manager. Who had worn it? Whose blood was it? Marissa begged me not to report it, saying she didn't want to be involved, and I could see the terror in her eyes. That was when it struck me. This wasn't just about me. The man was digging up the hotel's history, something dark and buried, and he was tying me to it. The more I investigated, the more the hotel itself seemed to turn against me. Guest complaints multiplied, strange noises at night, items going missing from rooms, shadows moving in hallways. One couple swore they woke up to find someone standing at the foot of their bed, only for the figure to vanish. When they turned on the light, they checked out, immediately demanding a refund. My reputation, the hotel's reputation, was crumbling, and I knew it was his doing. He wasn't just after me. He was dismantling everything I had built piece by piece. Then came the breaking point. I was reviewing logs late one night when the lobby phone rang. I answered with a shaky hello and froze when I heard a familiar voice, my own voice mimicking me, perfectly whispering, "It's time to remember what you did." My knees buckled and the receiver clattered to the desk, the line still alive with the sound of my own voice. Breathing, I ran to the security office, desperate, wild, and there on the monitors I saw it, room 714, storage jar, a sliver of darkness yawning inside. And from that blackness, two eyes glowed, faintly reflecting the dim hallway lights, watching me. Through the screen, something in me snapped. I couldn't take being preyed on anymore. If he wanted me to remember, then I dragged the truth out myself. I stormed up the stairs, rage blotting out my fear, and shoved open the door to room 714. The room was empty again, except for the suitcase sitting upright in the center of the floor. My breath hitched as I approached, the metallic stench stronger, now burning my nostrils. My hands shook as I bent down, fumbling with the brass locks, each click echoing like a gunshot. In the silence, I told myself I was ready, that whatever was inside couldn't be worse than the torment I'd endured. But when I finally pried it open, what I saw made my blood run colder than ice, because inside the suitcase was not clothes, not belongings, but photographs, hundreds of them, of me, spanning years from my childhood birthday parties to high school dances, from my first job in college to candid shots of me entering this very hotel years ago. Every stage of my life documented meticulously, obsessively, as though he had always been there, always watching, always waiting. And tucked neatly at the very bottom, wrapped in yellowed hotel stationery, was something far worse, a rustic key with the hotel's emblem carved into it, and attached to it a note that read, "You should have never locked that door, Harper. Now I'm going to open it." The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into shadow for a split second, and when they studied, the suitcase was Gone vanished from my hands, the photos with it, but I wasn't alone. From behind me came the unmistakable sound of the door clicking shut. Slowly, painfully, I turned, and there he was standing in the corner, smiling that same cold, knowing smile, his eyes gleaming in the dim light, suitcase by his side once more as though it had never left him. He raised a finger to his lips, shushing me softly, and whispered words that made my heart stop. "It's time you remembered her." The moment he whispered, "It's time you remembered her," something inside me cracked open like a dam, bursting, flooding my mind with fragments I'd spent years burying, memories I had locked away so tightly that I'd almost convinced myself they were never real. But his words ripped them free, jagged and raw, and I stumbled back against the wall of room 714, my breath tearing out in shallow gasps as images flickered, flashes of the hotel years ago when I'd first started as an assistant, younger, ambitious, eager to please, in the face of a girl who worked alongside me, a girl named Evelyn, soft-spoken, shy, always moving like she didn't belong, the kind of girl no one really noticed except me, and the kind of girl who carried secrets so heavy they bent her shoulders. I remembered the night she came to me, trembling, eyes swollen from crying, saying she couldn't work here anymore because one of the guests was stalking her, leaving her notes, slipping photos into her housekeeping cart, whispering her name through the vents, and she begged me, pleaded with me to help her, to believe her, but I didn't. I brushed her off, told her she was imagining things, told her to toughen up because I couldn't risk the hotel's reputation over what I thought was paranoia, and then only a week later she vanished without a trace, never checked out, never went home, just disappeared into the bones of the hotel, like she'd been swallowed alive. And though the police came, though they questioned all of us, no one could prove anything, and eventually the case went cold. But I remembered, oh God, I remembered that the last time I saw Evelyn was right here outside this very room. Room 714, the same brass numbers glinting in the dim light, the same heavy silence pressing down, and she had looked at me with those tear-streaked eyes and whispered, "Please don't lock the door." My knees buckled under the weight of it all as he stepped closer, his shoes whispering against the carpet, suitcase trailing beside him like a loyal hound, his eyes never leaving mine, and I finally understood he wasn't just some random stranger tormenting me. He was tied to Evelyn, maybe her brother, maybe her lover, maybe someone who had loved her so completely that my dismissal, my failure to protect her, had turned me into his obsession, his prey, his justice. And the note in the suitcase wasn't metaphorical at all, it was literal. I had locked that door that night after she begged me not to. I had shut her out when she needed me most, and she had never walked back through it. My voice cracked as I whispered, "What do you want from me?" And his smile widened, grotesque in the flickering light, as he replied, "Not want oh." He lunged before I could scream, and his icy hands closed around my wrists, dragging me toward the suitcase, now resting in the center of the room again, its lid yawning open like a coffin waiting to be filled. And inside I saw not just photos of me anymore, but photos of Evelyn, her eyes hollow, her figure blurred in hallways. I didn't remember her, walking as though the hotel itself had been keeping her prisoner all these years, and my body thrashed against his grip, adrenaline flooding my veins. But he was stronger, impossibly strong, fueled by something beyond human. He hissed into my ear, "You'll know her fate when you take her place." In a surge of desperation, I kicked the edge of the suitcase, knocking it sideways, the photos scattering like fallen leaves, and in the chaos, I ripped free, scrambling toward the door, fumbling for the handle, but it wouldn't turn. It was locked, just like it had been all those years ago, and my chest seized with panic as his shadow loomed closer, stretching long and monstrous across the walls, his laughter low and guttural echoing through the room as the lights flickered again, plunging us into bursts of darkness and light, until finally the bulb shattered with a pop glass raining down and we were submerged in blackness. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding like a war drum, my ears straining for the sound of his movements, and that's when I heard the suitcase creak open wider, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone breathing inside it, shallow, rasping, suffocating. My skin crawled as realization crashed over me. Evelyn was still here, what was left of her, and he was keeping her with him, forcing me to hear her dying breaths even years later. Something primal erupted in me, then a fury hotter than my fear, and I lunged blindly into the dark, my fingers closing around a shard of broken bulb on the carpet, jagged and slick, and I swung wildly when I felt his cold presence near the glass, slicing into flesh, his howl splitting the silence like a wounded animal. The lights flickered back to life in a surge, revealing him clutching his face, blood seeping between his fingers, his smile gone, but his eyes burning with something far worse, pure hatred. I didn't wait. I snatched the suitcase, heavy and reeking of decay, and hurled it with every ounce of strength. I hit against the window. The glass exploded. Outward shards raining into the night, and the suitcase tumbled into the darkness below, its contents scattering into the city air like ghosts finally released. His scream tore from his throat, not of pain but of rage, a sound so inhuman it vibrated the walls, and he lunged at me, but this time I was ready. I grabbed the rusted key still clutched in my pocket, the one he had left for me, and jammed it into the lock on the door. With a groan of protest, the mechanism turned and the door swung open. Light from the hallway spilling in like salvation, I staggered out, slamming it shut behind me, and when I turned back, the brass numbers had vanished. The door was just a wall, now seamless, as if room 714 had never existed at all. My breath came in ragged sobs, my body trembling from head to toe, but deep inside I felt something shift, like a curse breaking, like Evelyn finally freed. I didn't know if she was gone or if some part of her had lingered all these years, but I knew one thing: the hotel had been his hunting ground, his shrine to her memory, and I had been his final offering. But I survived. I broke the cycle. The next morning the police found nothing, no guest under that name, no suitcase, no photos, no evidence of anything I described. My staff looked at me with pity in their eyes, whispering about how stress had finally driven me mad, but I didn't care. I resigned that very day, left the Grand Elms behind forever, yet sometimes late at night when the world is quiet, I swear, I hear the faint creak of a suitcase opening somewhere in the dark, followed by a whisper curling through the air like smoke. "You can't erase what you did, Harper." And when I close my eyes, I see Evelyn's face, no longer pleading, no longer terrified, just watching me, waiting, reminding me that some doors once locked can never truly stay shut.